Broadcasting live from Jackson and State in Chicago's Loop, it's Radio DePaul Sports and Entertainment.
You're listening to RDSE, where sports and showbiz meet.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Beyond The ScoreBoard, presented by RDSE. I'm your host, Michael Lyons, and what a big opening week so far for NBA basketball. So let's just get right into it. I mean, a lot to say so far. Let's start with Tuesday night. Tuesday night. We had two games. Opening night, Celtics-Knicks was game one. Celtics raised their 18th banner. They got their rings and everything, and they showed out. 132-109 victory over the New York Knicks. Now, the biggest takeaways from the Celtics was Tatum had a huge game. 37 points, 10 assists, 4 rebounds, a block and a steal apiece. 14 for 18 shooting, 8 for 11 from the three-point line. Like, just an amazing game from Tatum. And then everybody else kind of just fit in around him. Al Horford gave you his average 11 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. They did not have Kristaps Porzingis, who is still dealing with an injury, and he's supposed to be out for a while. And then you had Drew Holiday with 18, 4 assists, a steal, 4 rebounds, 7 for 9 shooting, 4 for 6 from 3. Derek White, another big game. Like, Derek White is just going to have huge monster games this season. That's why I picked him up in fantasy basketball, the RDSC fantasy basketball so far. Going pretty good for me. But 24 points for Derek White, 4 assists, 3 rebounds, 8 for 13 from the field, 6 for 10 from 3. Jaylen Brown, 23 points, 7 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal. 7 for 18 shooting, 5 for 9 from the three-point line. Now, the biggest thing for the Celtics was they tied the NBA record for threes made in a game with 29. But after they tied that record, they went 0 for 12. They just needed to hit one more shot. Now, at this point in the game, they had basically all the bench guys in, like Jordan Walsh. Peyton Pritchard shot 1 for 9 from 3. Sam Hauser shot 2 for 7. So they didn't have their starters in there hitting the shots, but still, like, hit one more shot. That's all you need for the NBA record. But amazing game for the Celtics. They came out, showed why they just won the championship, and they're even better than they were before without Kristaps Porzingis, which is the biggest key to this. Now for the Knicks, they had a rough shooting performance. OG Anunoby shot 1 for 7 with 4 points and 5 rebounds. Mikal Bridges started the game off really rough. The first half was really rough for him, but then he started to pick it up in the second half. Cat had 12 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. Celtics did a good job at limiting him. Jalen Brunson had a solid game, 22 points, 9 for 14 from the field, 1 for 2 from the three-point line. So he had a solid game. Josh Hart, a solid game for Josh Hart with 12 points. Now, the biggest takeaway for the Knicks was Miles McBride off the bench at 26 minutes had 22 points. Now, you take it with a grain of salt because he did get a lot of garbage time minutes. Like, if they're in a close game, he's not going to get 26 minutes. But in the minutes he played, he looked really good, even when the game was a little bit closer in the first half. So if you're a Knicks fan, don't worry too yet. I mean, it's opening night. You have a brand new team, 2 new starters. Like, it's going to be tough to get acclimated right off the bat, especially because Cat, like, Mikal, you traded for him in the offseason, but Cat, you traded for him in the preseason. So, like, the mix between, like, the time they've had together is a little bit off. So, if you're a Knicks fan, don't take anything crazy. I know Knicks fans are pretty delusional when it comes to stuff like this, but let it take some time. In 2 weeks, they'll be fine. Now let's talk about Game 2 of opening night. We had the Timberwolves and the Lakers. The Lakers with a 7-point win over the Timberwolves. Obviously, the biggest moment of this game was Bronny and LeBron on the court together for the first time in NBA history, a father-son duo on the court together. It's just so much media. Like, Bronny should not be in the NBA. Bronny should not be getting minutes over Cam Reddish, who sat on the bench the whole game for the Lakers. Cam Reddish could have gave you 5-6 points in 8 minutes off the bench. Like, I know Bronny only played 3 minutes, but like JJ Redick, he got his first win as a coach. I'm happy for him. I hope he does well as a coach. He is probably one of the smarter basketball minds of ex-NBA players. So I think he'll do well as the Lakers coach. I mean, there's a lot of pressure on him going into the Lakers job position. But Bronny James is not deserving right now playing minutes over Cam Reddish. At this point, just run a 9-man rotation. You don't need Bronny James in there. Like, it's just so much media. They just wanted all the clicks. They got the dub, though. Anthony Davis, a monster game from Anthony Davis. 36 points, 16 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks. Huge game for Anthony Davis. 13 for 15 from the free throw line. Rui Hachimura was punching on people. He was dunking on Rudy Gobert, Julius Randle. Like, Rui is showing that when the Lakers were contending for a championship a couple years ago, when Rui was having that amazing playoff performances. So hopefully Rui can get back to that, because if the Lakers have Rui, they have Dalton Knecht, who was pretty quiet, but in the preseason he had a couple big games. Jackson Hayes, who got solid minutes and put up 10 points and 4 rebounds. So if they can get those guys, Rui Hachimura, D'Lo needs to shoot a lot better. 1 for 7, like AR 0 for 5. Like, the Lakers shot 5 for 30 from the 3-point line and still managed to get a win over the Minnesota Timberwolves, who were in the Western Conference Finals last season. So can't count the Lakers out yet. Injuries-wise, if injuries start to happen, then you can start counting the Lakers out. But if they have Anthony Davis, if they have LeBron, they're always going to contend. They're always going to be in games, and you can't really argue with LeBron and Anthony Davis, 2 of the better players in the league. Now, for the Timberwolves, like I said, you lose to a team that shot 5 for 30 from the 3-point line. Anthony Edwards had 27, 5 for 13 from the 3-point line, 10 for 25 from the field. Rudy Gobert had a double-double with 13 points, 14 rebounds. Julius Randle had a solid first game for the Timberwolves, 16 points, 9 rebounds, 4 assists. Jaden McDaniels did not do much, 6 points, but he's not much of a scorer, so I'll give it to him. Mike Conley was the big letdown in the starters, only having 5 points and 2 assists on 1 for 7 shooting and 0 for 5 from the 3-point line. So Mike Conley's supposed to be that vet guy that's just always supposed to be like, if you need a bucket, you go to Mike Conley. If you need him to pass to the wide open guy, like, he was definitely passing the wide open guys. They just weren't hitting shots. They ran a 9-man rotation, which was kind of odd because I assumed Rob Dillingham was probably going to get minutes. I assumed Terrence Shannon Jr. was probably going to get some minutes. I want Luka Garza to get some minutes in that backup big role for them, but he didn't play. So questionable lineup from Chris Finch. Nickeil Alexander-Walker always going to give you solid performances off the bench, proving why he's one of the better backup guards in the league. 14 points, 5 rebounds, shot very efficiently. Dante DiVincenzo had a rough first opening night. 10 points, but on 3 for 11 shooting, 2 for 8 from the 3-point line. It was just I wouldn't even say it was a rough game for the Timberwolves, because I just think they needed to run some more bodies out there against the Lakers. Like, Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert got into foul trouble because they just kept fouling Anthony Davis because they couldn't stop him. So it's tough to beat a team when they shoot 25 free throws. I mean, the Timberwolves shot 27, so the free throw discrepancy wasn't that crazy, but the Lakers were just hitting their free throws, so nothing crazy there. So opening night, biggest takeaway, Celtics are still the favorite in the East. Knicks, give them some time. Lakers, if they can stay healthy, this is what you can expect out of them night in, night out. Timberwolves, extend that lineup a little bit. Now, Wednesday was a big night. We had over, I think, 10 games. Yeah, we had 10 games on Wednesday night. And also some crazy stuff came out on Wednesday night. Let's start with one of the wilder things of this opening week. An ex-Clippers staffer is now suing the Clippers over firing him for having concerns over Kawhi's health. This just makes me wonder, if Kawhi isn't pushed to play every year, what if Kawhi retired a couple seasons ago? Would he have retired last season? I'm just wondering, what the underlying thing in this is. They fired him over concerns over Kawhi's health. Now, this isn't fully out. No lawsuits are going through yet. This just came out, a day or two ago. But still, if this is true that the Clippers fired him over having concerns over Kawhi's health, the Clippers definitely need to be investigated because they're just risking Kawhi in how he's going to feel in 20 years once he's done playing basketball. He's going to be like Byron Jones of the NFL, who for a while couldn't even walk, couldn't even stand, couldn't even run and play with his kids. Kawhi wants to do that. So this is making me wonder, should the Clippers be investigated fully for this? And, if this is true, what are the consequences for this? And then another investigation that just came out on Wednesday night. The 76ers are being investigated by the NBA regarding Joel Embiid's game participation to start the season. Now, in the Sixers' opening night game, they played the Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday night. They had no Paul George, who was out with that left knee bruise, or it was a bone bruise somewhere. So he has an excuse. He was playing in the preseason and suffered that injury. Joel Embiid hasn't played in all of the preseason games and didn't play opening night, and he's not supposed to play all of opening week. And what it's listed as is left knee management. He hasn't played since the Olympics. I assume he's practicing every day, because if he's not, that's another big thing that needs to be investigated. But he hasn't played actual big games. Preseason's not even big games. At the end of the day, they don't count towards your record. He's not playing because of left knee management. I know he's coming off a season where he had a couple surgeries, but he's supposed to be one of the better players in the league. He's already told people that he's projected not to play back-to-backs at all this season, and probably for the rest of his career. He's probably never going to play another back-to-back game. So I don't understand if this is the Sixers that are telling him because they want to save him for the postseason, but this is opening night. This is opening week in the NBA. You don't sit your starters unless they have major injuries like Kawhi, Paul George. These just aren't things you do. So it's just, I'm frustrated that Joel is not being able to play, or he's not wanting to play. We don't know who is making these decisions, but I assume it's the 76ers. But it could be a mixture of both. And if it's both, I'm frustrated and I'm angry that we're not going to be able to see an MVP, a guy that can contend for MVP, contend for Defensive Player of the Year every single season. Like, it's just frustrating that we're not getting our talent out there every single night. And hopefully this investigation goes well. We can figure out who is at fault and what needs to be fixed so this never happens again. Now, since we were talking about the Sixers, we'll talk about Bucks versus Sixers game. The Bucks, they beat the Sixers by 15. Okay. Taurean Prince, Giannis, Brook Lopez, Damian Lillard, Gary Trent Jr. was the starting lineup the Bucks ran out. Sixers ran out Tyrese Maxey, Eric Gordon, Kelly Oubre Jr., KJ Martin, and Andre Drummond. Since the Sixers didn't have Paul George or Joel Embiid, I was like, the Bucks need to just run away with this game. It's opening night, though. We know everybody's getting used to it. Like, I know preseason happens, but not everybody's going 100% in the preseason. So, but the Bucks only beating the Sixers by 15. I know they're missing Chris Middleton, who is his injury situation is shaky. They're not really sure exactly when he's supposed to come back, but if you look at these lineups, the Bucks should not be beating the 76ers by anything less than like 20, 25 points. But on the other hand, the Sixers just played pretty good. I mean, they didn't shoot the ball well, which is another thing to say, like, how did the Bucks not beat the Sixers by more when the Sixers shoot 8 for 31 from the three-point line and the Bucks shot 16 for 37. Like, they shot a total of 8 more three-pointers than them, but they just couldn't get the stops on the inside. Brook Lopez, he's looking pretty old. I mean, he's obviously just going to be the starter because they're paying him a lot of money, but 10 points, 1 for 6 from the three-point line, and only gave him 8 rebounds in 36 minutes. Like, I know you're going against one of the better rebounders in NBA history, but, like, come on. If you want to contend for championships, you got to fight for rebounds a little bit better. Giannis had a solid game, 25 points, 14 rebounds, 7 assists, and a block. Shot 8 for 11 from the field. He was hitting some pull-up middies, which if Giannis starts hitting pull-up middies and maybe pull-up threes, the league's in trouble, especially if Giannis can stay healthy this season. But this was a classic Damian Lillard game. 30 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, 9 for 19 from the field, and 6 for 12 from the three-point line. This was a classic Damian Lillard game. This is what the Bucks need day in and day out if they want to contend for a championship. And their pickups this offseason, Gary Trent Jr. had 11 points, solid on 50% shooting. Taurean Prince, he's going to be one of the biggest steals of this offseason. He gave them 16 points in 30 minutes and 5 rebounds as well. So, like, if he can give them that day in and day out, and even like half of that, if he gives them 8 rebounds and 8 points and 4 rebounds and 2 assists, like, the Bucks are going to take that, especially while Chris Middleton's out. Then for the Sixers, obviously Tyrese Maxey had to carry the scoring load, but Kelly Oubre pitched in. Tyrese Maxey had 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 assists. 10 for 31 shooting, though. He was just launching the ball. 2 for 9 from the three-point line. And then Kelly Oubre gave him 21 with 2 rebounds and an assist. 8 for 18 from the field. So if Maxey is giving you 25 without Joel and Paul George, that's big. I mean, obviously you want him to shoot the ball a little bit better, but right now, opening week, once the stars come back, it'll be a little bit better for him. Kyle Lowry gave him a solid game off the bench with 13 points. Caleb Martin, Yershon Yabusele, first game in 5 years for him. Gave 10 points, 3 steals, 3 assists, 4 rebounds off the bench. As long as Joel is out and Andre Drummond has to start, and Yershon Yabusele gets a lot of minutes off the bench for the Sixers, he's going to have a lot of impact off the bench. So hopefully that. I love seeing these guys that they were kind of counted out early. They left the NBA. They played overseas. They have some couple good seasons. They come back to the NBA, and they just get back to being a solid role player, which Yershon Yabusele can be. I mean, he's a little undersized to play center, but he'll be all right. Now, before we talk more about Wednesday night games, we're going to take a quick commercial break and then be back for Wednesday night games, finish them off, and then hopefully get into Thursday night games. This has been Beyond the Scoreboard on Radio DePaul Sports and Entertainment.
Struce curling right side, drills the jumper. See what Struce does. He looks like he wants to shoot. I was kind of hoping he'd pull up there, and one. Floater was wet. Struce is loose. Curl, three. Bang. You know it.
My goodness. Struce on the other end gets it to fall and one.
Now up top, he's got a double team. Now it's just Figueroa on him. Nice move. Quick move.
Wow.
Out of control.
My goodness.
Wow, he was out of control.
Max
He finished off
Struce.
glass.
That is a new career high for Max Struce. He had 34 earlier this year. He's got 35 now.
You're listening to Radio DePaul Sports, the student voice of your DePaul Blue Demons.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to some more opening week NBA talk with Beyond the Scoreboard. I'm your host, Michael Lyons. Is presented by RDSC. Now, before we went to commercial break, we talked about the 76ers and the Bucks. They had a lot of injury trouble for that game. A lot of guys missing. Joel, Paul George, Chris Middleton were all out. Let's talk about some sad injuries that happened in the first week. The first injury we saw was James Wiseman in his debut for the Pacers has now torn his Achilles in a non-contact injury. It was sad to see because we know what James Wiseman has been through. He's been labeled as a bust, dealing with injuries since he came out of college, out of Memphis. And he's just never found a home. He was with the Warriors, and he just couldn't be on the court. He was with the Pistons. He couldn't be on the court. He wasn't getting minutes. Hopefully for him, I know for him, like, guys that deal with this, they can lose they can lose the love for the game. He is such a talented guy. And after what he's been through, I could see him just losing love for the game, and I'm hopefully we can not see that happen because James Wiseman is one of the more talented big men in the league when he's healthy and when he gets minutes. That's all we need, but he's just struggled with that so far in his career. Hopefully he keeps fighting for it, and it's sad to see him go down, especially in the debut for the Pacers, but injuries happen. It's just sad to see. And then same night, Wednesday night, the Pelicans lose DeJounte Murray for, we're not exactly sure how long, but he fractured his left hand in the game. He still played through it though. I heard CJ McCollum was talking about it before the fourth quarter started. DeJounte Murray was talking about how his hand was feeling weird, how it was hurting. But DeJounte still went out, played in the fourth quarter. Obviously, the Pelicans beat the Bulls 123-111. But this is a big loss for the Pelicans because this was their big offseason acquisition. Getting DeJounte Murray was supposed to complete the starting lineup, and we didn't even get to see Zion play with him because Zion was out with an illness. So this is going to be a while until we see the core group of the Pelicans together because they're still not sure how long, but it's projected probably a couple months, 2 to 3 months for DeJounte Murray to be out. And he was their major get this offseason, and to lose him on opening night is sad to see. And hopefully they can bounce back from it. I mean, they have just so many guys on that bench. Like Jordan Hawkins can probably fill in. Trey Murphy's out too. So, they're struggling with injuries to start the season. I think once they get healthy, though, they'll probably be one of the scarier teams at the bottom of the West. I mean, obviously they're not going to contend with the Mavericks, the Timberwolves, the Suns, teams like that. They're not going to contend with those guys, but one in the middle tier, bottom tier of the East, we can see the Pelicans really thriving. Now in their game, 123-111 victory over the Chicago Bulls. The Bulls, 10 for 34 from the three-point line, so just under 30%. Zach LaVine gave you 27. Vooch gave you 21. Kobe White gave you 10, which is kind of odd because this is the thing with the Bulls. You need to move on from Zach LaVine. You need to move on from Vooch. They're taking shots away from Kobe White. He needs these shots. If he's not getting the shots, he's not going to be productive. He shot 4 for 13, which, I mean, that's shots, but his shots were forced. He can't force his shots as much as Zach LaVine can. Zach LaVine can force his shots and make them. Kobe White is still a younger player in this league. He's not to that level of Zach LaVine yet, so you just need to move on from Zach LaVine and get Kobe White the ball more. Josh Giddey, 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists in his first game as a Bull. Solid. Nothing crazy. Jalen Smith gave you a really solid game off the bench. If you're a Bulls fan, happy to see one of your off-season signings have a big game. Modest only played 5 minutes and he put up a donut, but had 2 rebounds and an assist, so hopefully he gets some more minutes. Lonzo had 14 minutes off the bench with 5 points, 4 assists, and 2 rebounds. Ayo had 8 points off the bench, but nobody on the bench besides Jalen Smith gave you anything. Starters, I mean, it was just basically Zach LaVine and Vooch out there. I mean, Josh Giddey gave you a pretty solid performance, but not ones to win. And then for the Pelicans, Brandon Ingram had an amazing game. 33 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. 13 for 23 shooting, 3 for 5 from the three-point line. So, big game from Ingram. Herb Jones played 33 minutes, but he left the game with a back injury. He had a rough fall that saw him exit to the locker room, but he only gave you 2 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists, and 2 steals. This Pelicans team, especially now that they just lost to DeJounte Murray, it's tough because you look at this team and you're like, how do they set their lineup? Daniel Tice cannot be a starter on a playoff team in the Western Conference this year. And I heard there was rumors that Herb Jones was going to be the starting center for the Pelicans this coming season. Like, Herb Jones is a great defender, super long arms, but he's still only 6'7" and weighs 206 pounds. He's going to get bullied down low when playing against guys like Rudy Gobert, who I know Rudy Gobert is not a scorer, but he's still going to put up like 14, 15 points on Herb Jones. You got Domantas Sabonis, you got Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis. Like, all those guys are just going to bully Herb Jones if he's their starter, and they're going to bully Daniel Tice as well. So maybe they should move on to their rookie V. Missy, 6'11", 235. He'll give him a little bit better weight and size, I guess, but also he's a rookie, so it's iffy on what they're going to do there. Jordan Hawkins had a solid game off the bench, 13.7 rebounds. V. Missy had 12 points and 7 rebounds. DeJounte gave you 14, a steal, 10 assists. So he gave you a double-double, almost a triple-double. He had 8 rebounds, 4 for 15 shooting, but obviously shooting is a little bit different if you have a fractured hand. We're not exactly sure when it happened, but we know it happened during the game. So obviously his shooting was a little bit off due to that. CJ gave you a solid game with 23 points, but this Bulls team, they need to give their young guy, Modest, some more minutes, move on from Zach LaVine, and the Pelicans need to figure out what they're going to do at big man. Now, some of the other big games that happened, we saw the Cavs blow out the Raptors by 30. Evan Mobley had 25 points, 9 rebounds, and 3 blocks, where Chris Boucher led the Raptors with 18 points. Nothing crazy there. I wasn't expecting much different. I mean, you throw out a lineup with Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley. They started Dean Wade, which was kind of odd, but Max Strus was injured, so once he's back, he'll just fit right back in the starting lineup. Scotty did not give you much if you're a Raptors fan. Grady Dick had a pretty solid game. Once he gets minutes, like, the biggest thing with Grady Dick last season was he just wasn't getting minutes, so if he gets his minutes, he'll shine. Emmanuel Quickley, like, nobody on the Raptors had a solid performance besides Chris Boucher off the bench, which, if you want to beat some teams this year, you can't have your best player be Chris Boucher. Scotty Barnes has to step up, but obviously it's opening week. Don't take anything crazily if you're a fan of these teams. We saw the Pacers beat the Pistons on Wednesday night. Pascal led the Pacers with 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists. And we saw Cade Cunningham with 28 points and 8 assists. Again, I hope the Pacers aren't just stuck in mediocrity. Like, they didn't play Paul Reed. Isaiah Stewart had some solid minutes off the bench. Malik Beasley gave you some solid minutes. Tim Hardaway Jr., he shot terribly in the preseason, but as soon as the regular season started, he shot a lot better. But obviously with Tim Hardaway Jr., it's more of the long game with him than what he is going to give you game one. Jalen Duren gave you a double-double. Obviously, probably the best young big man besides Vic and Chet Holmgren. Like, I love Jalen Duren. Love his game. Ron Holland, 6 points on 2 for 6 shooting. Like, nothing crazy there. Jaden Ivey and Benedict Mathurin, if you know, they have some beef from the rookie versus the team versus world, whatever that game is in the All-Star break. They had beef a couple years ago or even last season. I don't fully remember, but Benedict was giving it to the Pistons, 19 points, 5 for 8 shooting off the bench with a +8 plus or minus. So I'm really surprised Benedict Mathurin didn't start, but I like Aaron Nesmith. I like Andrew Nembhard starting alongside Tyrese and having a bench scorer. So solid lineup for the Pacers. Obviously, beat the Pistons. Nothing crazy opening night for this game. Hawks versus Nets was a pretty interesting game. I mean, you saw it was basically Cam Thomas versus the world out there. I mean, 36 points, 14 for 27 shooting, and the second highest leading scorer was Jalen Wilson with 16 points off the bench. And then Cam Johnson gave you a solid 14, but shot inefficiently. Dennis Schroeder gave you 13. Ben Simmons gave you 6, 8 assists, 5 rebounds. Like, if Ben Simmons can give you that, I mean, it's solid, but, like, that's not going to put you over the top. We saw Nick Claxton, who started on the bench for some reason and then got ejected after clotheslining Dyson Daniels. If you didn't see the play, go back and watch it. It was kind of wild. And then for the Hawks, we saw Onyeka Okongwu had 28 points off the bench for them, 11 for 12 shooting. Very efficient game. He had 8 rebounds. Arguably should be the starter for the Hawks, in my opinion. Like, I love Clint. He gives you what you want around Trae Young, but I feel like Onyeka can give you the same thing and a little bit more at this point because Clint's kind of on the downturn of his career. But we saw Trae Young got 30 points, 12 assists, double-double for him. Dyson Daniels had 15 in his first start for the Hawks. Bogdan had 8. Zachary Richichet, the first overall pick, had 7 points off the bench on 2 for 8 shooting. His first shot made was a three-pointer, so if you can give that for the Hawks, I don't think he's that crazy of a prospect. I mean, like, he'll probably be good, but this draft class was pretty weak in my opinion, so I'm not expecting a an all-star, superstar out of Zachary Richer or any of the top picks this season. Now we'll move on to the Magic versus the Heat, the Battle of Florida. The Magic kind of just ran away with it. They handled this game very easily. Paolo had 33 and 11 rebounds. Franz Wagner had 23. Wendell almost gave you a double-double with 8 points and 14 rebounds. KCP only had 3 points. 0 for 5 shooting. Like, their big signing of the offseason puts up 3 points and not much on the defensive end besides 2 blocks and a steal. But, like, if that happens night in and night out and the Magic are still beating teams by 19 points, that's scary for the rest of the league. Gary Harris gave him a solid game off the bench with 18 points in 22 minutes. Anthony Black had 10 points in 28 minutes. So just a solid game for the Magic. Definitely Paolo's big year this season, I could tell. Hopefully he can just jump onto the scene, be one of the guys that takes over this Magic team and brings them to Eastern Conference Finals, contends in the East for the next couple of seasons while they just keep getting younger and keep getting better. Then the Miami Heat, really rough game for Jimmy Butler. 3 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds on 1 for 8 shooting. Bam Adebayo, 9 points for 1 for 5 shooting. So the stars for the Heat did not show up. Their leading scorer was Terry Rozier with 19, and then it was Nikola Jovic, and then it was Tyler Hero. But just a really rough game for the Heat. I mean, Jaime gave you a solid game off the bench, I guess. Pele Larson, the rookie, 6 minutes, he had a plus 13, plus or minus, so take that with what you will. I mean, they were beating them, so obviously the rookies are going to get in and have a good stretch of time because Khalil Ware also had a plus 13, plus or minus in 6 minutes, so I think this is just the opening night snooze fest for the Heat. Nothing crazy. We talked about the Bucks-Sixers game. Cavs dominated the Raptors. Hornets-Rockets was a very interesting game. You had LaMelo Ball have 34 points and 11 assists against Alperen Şengün had 25 points and 18 rebounds. So, battle of the stars right there. A 110-105 victory for the Hornets. I mean, a solid game for both teams. I mean, nobody really sticks out to me that didn't play well. I mean, Brandon Miller left the game early with an injury, so we only saw him for 11 minutes. But in those 11 minutes, he gave you 6 points on 50% shooting. Trey Mann, Allen Iverson wannabe Trey Mann gave you 24 points off the bench. Again, another solid guy that's just going to keep scoring for you when LaMelo and Miles Bridges and Brandon Miller are out. But a solid game for the Hornets. Rockets. Dylan Brooks struggled. Jabari Smith struggled. Alperen Şengün had a good game, obviously. Fred VanVleet struggled. 14 points, 2 for 11 for the three-point line. Terrible game for him. Jalen Green gave you 28 points, but shot inefficiently. Amen Thompson had a solid game off the bench. Reed Shepherd only had 4 points in 16 minutes. So, I think the Rockets were getting open. They just weren't hitting their shots. Şengün was controlling the offense, which he usually does, and why he's one of my picks to be an all-star this season. So, I'm not too worried about this. I wish Jonathan Williams maybe got some minutes. 5A5 guys, if you know. But just a solid game from the Hornets and some struggled shooting for the Rockets. Grizzlies beat the Jazz by 2. This Jazz team can be very fun to watch, though. They were throwing so many lobs to Lauri Markkanen, to Walker Kessler. Taylor Hendricks had some highlight plays. Keontae George is going to be a star in this league, and when you put him on a team like the Jazz who have all these lob threats, he's just going to thrive. So, the Jazz Fun team to watch. Grizzlies had a solid game. Ja led them. Desmond Bane had a good game. Santi Aldama had 27 points. So they had a solid game. Everybody kind of performed for them, and they beat the Jazz. Suns, they sneaked out a victory after James Harden missed a free throw. And then the Warriors got their biggest opening night dub in their franchise's history with a 140-104 victory over the Trailblazers. Curry almost had a triple-double, but the big story for the Warriors, I mean, obviously, besides Draymond getting his first tech of the season in the first game, which just typical Draymond yelling at the ref. Buddy Hield, 22 points. 22 points off the bench for Buddy Hield on 8 for 12 shooting. He needs to be in the starting lineup alongside Curry and with Draymond. If they can get him in the starting lineup, Buddy Hield's bound for a huge season this coming season, so I'm ready to watch it. I love Buddy Hield, ex-Kings guy. Always been rooting for Buddy no matter where he goes, so happy to see him thriving with the Warriors system. Now, before we talk about the Thursday night games and my Sacramento Kings in their disappointing loss to the Timberwolves, rough loss, but we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll come back and talk about the Thursday night games here on Radio DePaul Sports Entertainment.
Hey, it's Dibs, your favorite demon in a blue suit. You're listening to Radio DePaul Sports, the student voice of your DePaul Blue Demon.
Campbell to Stonewall. Stonewall driving to the rim, goes up, gets it to fall, and one.
Oh, Max Strus brings down the house.
Radio DePaul Sports, your home for Blue Demon basketball.
Welcome back to Beyond the Scoreboard. For the last 15 minutes of the show, we're going to talk about Thursday night opening week of basketball. We're going to skip through the Celtics, not talk too much on them. They just beat the Wizards by 20 points last night. Another solid game from Tatum. Jaylen Brown had a solid game. Peyton Pritchard gave you a good game off the bench. I mean, Al Horford gave you a donut and you still beat a team by 20. Like, that's pretty wild to see, but it is the Wizards. Alex Sarr, the number 2 overall pick, 2 points in 22 minutes, 1 for 7 shooting, 0 for 5 from the three-point line, and he had a couple really bad misses. Kyle Kuzma gave you 12 points. Obviously, you look at Jordan Poole and you're like, oh, we got a scorer. But for me, when I watch Jordan Poole play, like, he does not fit with the Wizards. You have all these young guys. You got Bilal Coulibaly, you got Bub Carrington, you got Keyshawn George, you got Jared Butler, like Alex Sarr. These guys need their shots to develop in the league. And Jordan Poole taking 17 shots, Kyle Kuzma taking 16 shots. It's just taking shots away from those guys. I mean, obviously, if they're going to miss shots. They're rookies. And I'm not saying you trade away both Kuzma and Poole, but one of those guys definitely needs to be on the move. And in my opinion, it should be Jordan Poole because he's not a very good leader. He's shown that he's not a good leader. I mean, he just wants to score. In my opinion, I don't like Jordan Poole as a starter for a rebuilding team. I like him more as a starter on a contending team or a mid-table team. So that was my big takeaway from the Wizards game was I just don't want to see Jordan Poole taking away shots from all those young guys. Bub Carrington struggled. Bilal Coulibaly, 8 points. Only shot it twice, though. Like, he shot 6 for 8 from the free throw line, but only had 2 shots, and he made 1. But he gave you 8 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. So, solid game for Bilal Coulibaly. Off the bench, Marvin Bagley gave you 8. Keyshawn George gave you 4, 3 rebounds, but again, only shot the ball 6 times. Jonas gave you 18 off the bench. Like, I just don't like how the Wizards are lining up, how they lined up in the first game. They shot 7 for 36 from the three-point line, and 6 of those threes came from Jordan Poole. The only other person to hit a three-pointer for the Washington Wizards last night was Patrick Baldwin Jr. That is not a recipe to win games. obviously, like, all this is just, it's week 1 of the NBA season. All these crazy things are going to happen. But I'm telling you, Jordan Poole is going to take away shots from the young guys. The young guys are going to get upset. The young guys are going to lose. Jordan Poole also does not play defense. I know it says he had 4 steals and a block. He does not hustle on defense. He is not running to get rebounds. He's not good for a rebuilding team. You want these guys like Bub Carrington. You got these guys like Bilal Coulibaly. You want guys like Keyshawn George, Patrick Baldwin Jr., who are just going to run, hustle, try to get the ball. They're just trying to learn the game. Jordan Poole does not give you that. And for me, biggest takeaway from the Celtics-Wizards game was Jordan Poole is a good scorer. Not going to take it away from him. He's a great NBA player, great scorer, but he's just not good for the Wizards, and I want to see him get moved, contend for a championship, contend in the playoffs. That's my biggest takeaway from that. Now, we'll go to another game, the Battle of Texas, Dallas versus San Antonio. Victor Wembanyama in his first game with Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes. Chris Paul only had 3 points, 1 for 6 shooting, 8 rebounds, or 8 assists, 7 rebounds. So solid game for Chris Paul. I mean, he's not a scorer. Obviously, you want him to shoot the ball a little bit better. But his only shot, his first make as a Spur was in like the third quarter, which is kind of wild because you want like a vet to kind of set the tempo of the game. I mean, Harrison Barnes did a great job of that. He gave you 17 points at 7 for 10 shooting, and he was attacking the rim early. Julian Champagnie, I always mix him and Justice Champagnie, the other NBA guy with the same last name. I get those guys mixed up, but Julian Champagnie, Pop has spoken highly of him this offseason. Gave you 18 points starting with Devin Vassell out. Jeremy Sohan gave you 18 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. A lot of the starters played well. Chris Paul kind of struggled. Vic struggled shooting-wise. He still had 7 points and 9 rebounds and an assist and a block, but he had 4 turnovers and shot 5 for 18 from the field and 1 for 8 from 3. So he struggled in game 1. The bench didn't really give you much. I mean, Stephon Castle, who I'm big on still, going to keep saying I'm big on him because I want everybody to know that he is going to be a key contributor for the Spurs team in the coming future when they contend for a championship. He gave you 8 points, 3 for 7 shooting, 0 for 2 from the three-point line, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. So, solid game for Stephon Castle off the bench, but nobody on the bench gave you much, and you didn't have a super high scorer. A lot of solid 17, 17, 18, 18, and 3 for the starters. So, that's not a recipe to win a game against a team like the Mavericks, who they had some struggles. Kyrie only had 15 and shot inefficiently. Luka shot inefficiently but gave you 28 and 10 rebounds and almost a triple-double with 8 assists. Klay gave you 22, 6 for 10 shooting. Again, it's like the Tim Hardaway thing. Like, they might start off the season very consistent for the first 2 weeks, but then they just fall off a cliff at that point. So hopefully that doesn't happen for the Mavericks or the Pistons. But the starters for the Mavericks, they didn't shoot very well, but you still get the dub. I would rather see Derek Lively starting than Daniel Gafford if I'm a Mavericks fan. I love Derek Lively's game. Gave you 15 points off the bench, 28 minutes. Gave you a double-double off the bench with 11 rebounds. So if I'm a Mavericks fan, I want Derek Lively starting over Daniel Gafford. They give you like the same thing, same lob threat. It's gonna block a lot of shots, but I would rather see the young guy get the minutes than the vet. But other than that, Jaden Hardy gave you 11 and 20 minutes. Nothing crazy. Just nothing crazy for the Mavericks bench either. Just kind of a weird game if you're a Mavericks fan, because You want to see like Luka and Kyrie shoot more efficiently, but you still get the dub. That's all that matters for that game. Now, before we finish the show off with the Kings-Timberwolves game, we're going to talk about the Thunder and the Nuggets, two of the heavy hitters in the Western Conference this season. The Thunder get a 15-point victory over the Denver Nuggets, winning 102-87. Now for the Thunder, you had Shea have 28, Chet have 25. And then after that, there wasn't really much. Aaron Wiggins gave you 15 points off the bench, but Shea and Chet really carried them. I mean, Shea had 28, 8 assists and 7 rebounds with 2 steals and 3 blocks, 11 for 24 shooting. Chet Holmgren gave you 25 with 14 rebounds, but again, Chet and Vic, they just need to put weight on. Like, Chet was getting bullied by Jokic. And, I mean, Jokic only had 16 points on 6 for 13 shooting, so obviously Chet's length disrupts him, but in the low block, Jokic was bullying. There was a play where I just saw Chet Holmgren fall to the ground and Jokic kind of just standing there like he barely even bumped into him. So that's kind of something to watch out for, especially when we get later on in the season, especially into the playoffs when they're battling for a 7-game series. You want to see Jalen Williams, J-Dub shoot a little bit better for the Thunder, but again, opening week, these things happen. If you're a Thunder fan, you're just happy you got out with a victory with only Shea and Chet really coming to play and Aaron Wiggins giving you a solid game off the bench. For the Nuggets, a lot of balanced scoring in the starters, 16 for Christian Braun, 12 points for Jamal Murray, 16 for Jokic, 15 for MPJ, and 12 for Aaron Gordon. They didn't shoot very well. They only shot as a team 35% and 18% from the three-point line. So that's not a recipe to beat a team like the Thunder. And their bench didn't give them anything. Highest score off the bench was Russell Westbrook with 6 points on 2 for 10 shooting. They just need to be more efficient. But again, opening week, you'll see this efficiency come back. Now for the final 4 minutes, we'll talk about my team, Sacramento Kings. Heartbreaking loss last night against the Timberwolves, where we lose off of 2 free throws by Anthony Edwards. But this play could have just been stopped. This play could have been prevented. If you watch the final play that Anthony Edwards got, that drove to the basket and got fouled on, he's on the top of the key. He moves to the right wing, and then he starts his movement. Malik Monk, who is guarding Naz Reid in the corner, if he helps over, double teams Anthony Edwards so he can't get that lane to the basket and drive downhill, we force Naz Reid to shoot. We live with it. I'd rather live with Naz Reid hitting a wide-open corner 3 than we foul Anthony Edwards and he makes both of his free throws and we lose the game off that. So, biggest thing, just help over Malik Monk, slow Anthony Edwards down. Even at that point, make Anthony Edwards make a different play if he doesn't want to pass it to Naz Reid, if he doesn't trust Naz Reid in the corner. Naz Reid gave you a solid game, 19 points, 13 rebounds off the bench. So he probably would have hit the shot, but I'd rather live with Naz Reid either hitting or missing that shot than we let Anthony Edwards drive downhill and we play it in the game of the refs and we let them call a shot or call a foul. It was a foul. I'm not going to argue that it wasn't a foul. It was a foul, but it just could have been prevented. Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle combined for 65 points, but then the rest of their starters didn't give them anything. Mike Conley's still struggling to shoot, but obviously Julius Randle, their big preseason acquisition, had a big game. Dante still struggled with 4 for 10 shooting on 9 points. Then for the Kings, we had some balanced scoring. De'Aaron, 15 points. Want to see him shoot better. Keegan Murray had a really good game. 23 points shot, 50% from the 3-point line with 5 for 10. DeMar gave you 26 on 7 for 18 shooting. Domas gave you 24 and 8 rebounds, so not worried about the Kings. Malik gave you 17. Biggest thing for the Kings, I would just say I want to see Keon Ellis starting over Kevin Huerter. I mean, I know Keon isn't a big scorer, but I'd rather him in for the defense. You put Keegan Murray on Julius Randle, and you put Keon Ellis on Anthony Edwards. Slows them both down a little bit. But that's all we have today here, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed Beyond the Scoreboard. My name is Michael Lyons, and this has been presented by RDSE.